Hello, today I'm back with another Cinema 4D, Octane and After Effects tutorial. Today I'll be taking you through my light bulb project. I thought I would do a speed through the modeling since it's fairly simple to understand. The light bulb itself is just made up of a cylinder. We'll add some lines all over the place, and we'll sort of just adjust it until we can get our cylinder type shape. You want to remove the bottom part so that it doesn't smooth out the bottom, and then we'll insert it inside a subdivision surface and just adjust it until it fits. Then we're going to take our faces, extrude them in, and now we're going to start making the bottom part of the light bulb itself. It's fairly simple to do, so as you can see here, I'm just extruding it outwards and getting this nice shape over here. Flatten the top part, and then we're going to close the hole at the top and then put some lines in. I'm going to add some lines all over the edges over here just so that we can get some harsher edges over there. And here we can get this nice shape of the bottom piece. I don't even know what that piece is, to be honest, but you can do this however you want to. There's different shapes of light bulbs and different shapes of light bulb holders and all that stuff. It all depends on your reference. The inside part here is we're going for something fairly simple, not something too complicated. I just went for this shape because that's what I had in my original project's references, so that's just what I went for. I'm going to take a sphere and insert in the inside because we had this sort of bubble sort of shape in the original references, so I tried to insert a bubble inside the middle there, add a fair bit of realism, but most of this we're not gonna really see much of the thin parts of these wires here, so I didn't really pay too much attention to it. It'll get blown out by all the light that's shining through, so you don't need to go super detailed with these wires here. But here I just use a helix for the actual emission object, and then I added some splines for the wires themselves. Very simple, very simple in terms of the modeling. And yeah, that's our light bulb. And then here I'm going to use a spline to create our wire and just add some points and adjust them all over the place until we get some variation, and that's pretty much it. And then we'll dive into the texturing of this project, and then the fun stuff actually starts. Okay, so that's the quick speed through of the modeling done. As you can see, it's fairly simple to do. Texturing we're going to do now, so we're going to open up our Octane Live Viewer, pop everything in. We're going to drag in an HDRI for our lighting, and we'll just use this so we can sort of see what our textures are going to look like and what our model's going to look like over here. So bring in a specular material. This will be our gloss, and index 1.52. We'll change our face shadows, stick that on, and we'll turn on our effect alpha as well, since we'll be using an alpha channel for transparency. We'll apply this to our gloss, and we'll also apply it to this inner piece here. So let's just go and hide that. Select it, apply it to that as well, and I think there's something wrong with this cylinder, so I'm just going to optimize it, and now it should be working, but it clearly isn't. So let's go and check if our render settings, change it to path tracing, 100%, 100 on your GI clamp, and then 2000 and your max samples. Then we'll change this to 2.2 gamma, natural response 0, and then linear. And now everything looks nice and dandy. So we'll bring in a glossy material. This will be a metal, and you won't really see this anyway, so I'm not really going to do much on this, but change that to 7 and maybe make the diffuse black. And then we can find these inside pieces here. They'll be blown out by the actual emission, so it doesn't really matter how much of a text, how much you do. It doesn't really matter what you do with the textures in this point, because they'll be blown out anyways. We're going to turn off our textures here, and we'll add in a diffuse material. This will be our emission, and we can apply that to this object here. If my Cinema 4D can stop freezing. Just turn that off. There. Can apply that onto that. Then I'm going to turn on emission on yet because we're still doing some texturing. We're going to add in another glossy material, and this will be our plastic. You can obviously do whatever you want with this. I'll just call this plastic. plastic. Over here, I'm going to change this percent to 5, and then I'll apply that to this object over here. And I'll also apply it to the wire over there. And I'm not really going to do much here, but add in a bump map over here. Just add some scratches, bit of realism. This is all creative choices, so all depends on what you want to do. Like so, and then I'm going to change this to cubic over here. I will turn down the opacity to 0.01 and maybe turn down the scale to 25 and 25. Something like that. So you can do whatever you want to do in those sections. This is all creative choices. For our actual subdivisions, I need to make sure that this is all optimized correctly. So this piece here, you won't really see it much, so I can probably turn this down to 2. Inside here, subdivisions I guess are okay, so I'll just leave that. This top part, subdivisions are also quite well optimized for the glass itself. Let me make this 2, make this 2, and everything else seems to be pretty fairly optimized. We don't really need to do much else. So for our actual emission, we're going to add in a black body emission over there. And we're going to get rid of, no, let's not get rid of this. We're going to change our HDRI to this one over here. And then I'll just turn down the power to 0.1. This is just for some reflections in the background and stuff. So I'm going to sort of set up my composition now. I went for a 1920 I went for a 1.91 aspect ratio just for Instagram's sake. Most of my images are outputted to Instagram, so that's the reason why I went for that aspect ratio. And then turn on my render safe, turn up to 100, and I'm going to add in an Octane camera. I'm going to change this camera lens to a portrait lens. I'm just going to sort of move it around. You can also add in some guides as well, some guides if you want over here, so you can sort of get an idea of where you want your actual scene to be pointing and looking and stuff like that. I forgot your scale of your actual object. This is why things feel a bit weird. Scaling of your object is very important, so I'm just going to scale this down by a lot, maybe 10%, and then we're going to see how far we've gone here. Scale it down to 50%, scale it down to 50% again, and we're just going to go in halves the whole time. And I guess that's around real world scale, doesn't have to be perfect. My camera's going a bit weird, so I'm just going to delete this camera. And then I'm going to try and get this camera to figure out where it's supposed to be pointing. Like that. Cool. So now we can insert another camera over here. Change that to portrait lens again. And now you can sort of adjust this. This can be wherever you want it to. You can adjust your composition however you want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create an instance of this, and then I'm going to turn on my guides over here, grid, and then I'll do something like this, and then the instance I'll just move back like so. So it's sort of in the background. Then I'll just rotate it randomly like that. And then maybe offset the rotation, and then offset the rotation of this. So it's just not, so it's not like all perfectly sitting like that. And then you sort of get the idea of the composition. This is all creative choices over here. I'm going to duplicate this, and this will be our instance, not a clone version of the actual of the light bulb. This will have less subdivisions and stuff, and that's why I duplicated it. So I'm going to put this all inside a cloner, and then I'll change this to grid. I'll just move it to the back. I'll what do we want to do with this? So there's a lot of options here. I'm just going to turn this down to 50, and then I'm going to insert a random. Wait, let's move this. So maybe I should change that down to 100. Something like that. 150. I'm going to insert a random effector like so, And then inside my rotation, I'm going to change this to 360. I'm going to change this to 10 and then change that to 10. And then here I can maybe go 25, 25, 25, 50, 50, and everything. Oh, that's why. I was wondering why there was Python code. Random effector, I selected the wrong one, my bad. Just make sure that's affecting the thing. I'm going to change this to a rotation to 360, 10, 10, and then maybe here I'll go 25, something like that, and you can sort of adjust the seed as well to whatever you want it to be, like that, to whatever you want your scene to look like. Maybe here I'll go 4, 4, and then here I'll just push this back like that. This is all creative choices. Something like that would actually look quite nice. So for our actual cloned object over here, we want less subdivision since most of it will be in the background and blurred. So we're just going to turn down our subdivision so that we don't have too many polygons in the scene. Octane's specular material and emission don't work well together. You'll have a lot of hot pixels all over the place. So just turning down your subdivisions will just benefit it in the final. So you don't have to have such a long render time. So we're going to bring in our live view again, and we're going to see what this looks like. I should probably turn off. I'm going to turn off my clones for now. And then we're going to see, just turn this off and reset it. Going to see what this looks like over here. So for our, we're going to turn on post-processing so we can sort of see how bright our light is. And then I'm going to change the temperature to 3500. And then I'll turn down the brightness to 25. Maybe 15, something like that. I'm gonna blur my glare, and I think that's all we need to do for that. You can already see there's some crazy hot pixels coming out over here, and there's not much you can do about that besides changing your hot pixel removal or just increasing your samples. I had this issue in my final. So you can add in all your clones and stuff, and what we're going to do is we're going to click Effects Alpha. We're going to turn off Keep Environment, and then in our post, not in our post, we're going to change our renderer to Octane render. In our multipass settings, we're going to enable that. We're going to go and tick Post. We're going to tick Environment, and then we're also going to go and tick Position Pass, and that's pretty much all you'll need for this scene over here. There's not really much else you need. There's creative things you can do with refraction and reflection, and there's a bunch of other stuff. We also want to go and tick Zip over here, Zip Compression. That's pretty much all. You just want to select your file location, and under here you want to select PNG, alpha channel, 16 bits, and that's pretty much it. And you can sort of adjust your environment to get the right reflections in your particular scene. You can just like rotate it around. Let me just turn this alpha channel off and then try and get some nice reflections going here. I'm not actually going to use this scene for rendering, but you can sort of get the idea. I think something like, where's this light? I saw light here. Like that could be nice, or if I go and find another section. Just looking for an area where there's some really nice reflections going. And something like that might be nice for reflections. I don't know. It all depends on what you want to do, and that's the general idea. So we're going to go render this out. I'm going to pretend to, and then I'm going to go and import it inside of After Effects, and then I'll see you inside of After Effects. Okay, so inside of After Effects now, we've imported our light bulb over here. We're going to create a new composition. We're going to change this to 16 bits. And we're going to bring in our EXR format as well. And here I'm going to just start off with the depth of field. So we're going to bring in our position pass. We'll change this to red over here. I'm going to pre-compose this, call this depth comp. Like so. And then we can sort of adjust this and find out where we're supposed to be heading. So we're going to change this to 0.5. Minus 0.5. No, I'm going to keep that minus 0.1. Then we can go 5, 4, something like that. We're going to add in a background. We'll call this BG. And then we want to invert this. Invert. So now I do have these lines going on here. I'm not too sure why they are there or how to fix it yet. I still need to do some research and maybe post on Facebook and ask for help. But it's okay. It's not going to affect our render too much. So I'm going to create a adjustment layer. We'll call this DOF. For depth of field. I'm going to use a Frischlight depth of field plugin. You don't need to do this. I just find this plugin is incredibly useful, incredibly powerful plugin, and it's a lot better than After Effects' way of doing it. So I'm going to select depth comp, and then we're not going to turn it on yet. I'm just going to save it because the scene's already too dark to actually see what's going on. So I'm going to try and brighten up the scene a bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with the particles for the background. So I'm going to go particles. I'm going to solo this layer. I'm going to go and bring in particular, one of my favorite plugins. And in the emission section, I'm going to turn my emission extras up to 100. I'm going to turn up my particle life to 100 as well. And I'm going to change the type to box. I changed the size there, my bad. Size 5. Life 100. I'm going to turn down the particles a second to maybe 5, and then I'll just sort of scale this out for some variance. I'll change the color to a sort of orangish, just to match the background a bit, and maybe turn up the color random to 25. And we'll put this under the depth of field. So now if I turn on my depth of field to 15, start off small. We don't want anything too intense in the background. Particles aren't showing that well at the moment. So we'll start off with some color grading just to brighten up the scene a bit. We'll do looks. And also what I want to do is, so I'll call this CC. I want to add in my glow over here. So I'm just going to bring in my EXR format here. And I'll put that on top of the depth of field, and I'll just go extractor. And then here I'll bring in my post-processing, like that. I can change it to add, like so. And I'm just going to go and bring in some exposure so I can correct this gamma over here. I'm just going to change this to 2.2, and we should get a more natural look over there, like so. So that's what I was looking for, and maybe I want to put this on under the depth of field, like that. The particles, I can probably increase the size to 10. Let's do 15, and now you can see our bokeh is really coming out there. So it's my cheat way of doing bokeh. Let's just see what's going on here. Let's do 15, 10, and I could probably change the seed around as well. Maybe I should reduce the amount to 4. Maybe I should turn up my size random to 25. In my depth of field settings, I can go and do highlight selection. I can go and do highlight selection here. And let's play with this. Let's see here. If I go and just copy that, do that. How will this look in my final? So now we're sort of getting what I was looking for. Let's take a look at our final. Here the bokeh's a bit bigger, but we also have less of it. So I'm going to change this to 4 and maybe turn up the size to 15. No, it's not working in this case. I'll just keep it the way it is. It looks fine the way it is now. So just keep it like that. In my color correction settings, I'm going to go and I'm doing it with looks because I just like keeping everything in one place. I'm going to use Photorealistic here. I'll bring this up slightly and then I'll change this to a more orangey, and then I'll just sort of pull in opposite directions here. Something like that. Bring that up. And we will add just a tiny bit of grain. You don't have to do this, but I'll just change it to 0.5. Then I'll add in another layer. We'll call this chromatic aberration. We'll call this CA for chromatic aberration. I want to change this to final. I'm just going to bring in another looks layer over here. And in this layer, I feel like it's about to crash. Nope, didn't crash. I'm going to go and click chromatic aberration, and I'm just going to pull around here and see what sort of effect I can get. So that's kind of what I'm looking for over there. And then I'm just going to go and add in a ellipse tool for our mask, like that. We're going to invert the mask and add some feathering, so maybe 400 pixels. And we'll see what this looks like now. Now you see that we're only getting the aberration on the edges, and it's not happening in the center, which is what we were looking for. Might be a bit too intense, so maybe turn this down to 75. See what that looks like. Okay. What we can do next is we can go and add in a flare, a lens flare. This part took a bit of time for me to get right, but I'll try and sort of get you through the concept of it. So if I just go and solo, let's just see. I'm going to place this here, and then I'm going to try and find the right one to use. I think I used this one. Something like that, and then we can go and change the aspect ratio, just squeeze it out like that. Maybe turn the scale down to 75. Actually, keep the scale up, turn the brightness down to 75. I don't like this one. We're gonna go with this one over here. We turn the brightness down to 50. Let that load through. Like that. And then I went and used some different lens objects here. I used a ring, and this part was a bit tricky to get correct. I did a lot of editing with this to get this right. But with the ring, I could just turn up the brightness to 125. And here I can maybe increase the thickness to 40, increase the feathering a bit, and increase the thickness to 50. Sort of see what we're getting, and I should also turn up the scale, my bad. Be 125, something like that. And you sort of get the idea. I just adjusted this until I got that sort of ring kind of shape around there. And you can obviously do whatever you want with your lens flares and stuff. And then I just duplicated it to there. I should really get this depth of field layer rendered so it doesn't have to refresh like that. My color correction settings I don't feel like it's complete yet. Maybe I want to add a slight bit of contrast. Maybe I can brighten this up slightly. It's the same there. I could go and add in, what could I do here? Not really much else. Let's go and add in a vignette. We turn this down to 50%. And we could guess that's the general concept of it. There's still too many particles in the background though. And I want them to be bigger, but every time I turn up the size, it looks wrong. And I'm not too sure what to do about it. So, see, they stop becoming harsh edges. Stop having harsh edges, and I'm not too sure what to do about that. I think if I turn off my sphere feather, and then if I, ooh, that didn't work. Turn this up and then see what happens. But it's all up to you. It's all up to you adjusting and all that stuff. But that's the basic concept and idea of how I went about making this project. But yeah, that's my light bulb tutorial for Cinema 4D, Octane, and After Effects. I hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you on my next video. Have a great day and goodbye.